do with participation. Because when you come to a realm long enough, that realm will lend itself to you. And so you begin to touch things that are in that realm. Those things you touch is what gives you the right to address your generation. Because your generation is in need. They are not looking for talkers. They are looking for witnesses. And it is what you have seen and handled that you can deliver to a generation. And so what priesthood will do and insist on is that you must touch something so you become a representative and an embodiment of that dimension. If you have not touched anything, you can't address your generation. He said that which was from the beginning. 1 John chapter 1 from verse 1, which we have heard, which we have looked upon, and our hands have handled of the word of life. He said that is what we have come to commit to you. And I said, when you attain these 4 levels, then you come to the final realm of priesthood that entails more of prayer. And that realm of priesthood is what we call legislation and litigation. And I said legislation is the act of enacting spiritual laws and ordinances, while litigation is the act of enforcing spiritual laws and ordinances. So in priesthood, cardinal in your prayer is the ability to create change, because you have the power through God to establish his dominion and to establish his mandate. Now, it's possible for you to think these things are casual things because you probably have not understood that everywhere humankind find expression, spirits are interested in those realms. Because currently, the earth is the spectacle of all of God's creation. If you have studied the Bible and understanding has been granted you, one thing you realize is that the Bible says God sits in the cycles of eternity. God is on a project of creation, and creation did not begin with us, neither will it end with us. That's why when you go to heaven, you have elders, you have thrones, you have dominions, you have principalities, you have powers, you have archangels. All kinds of spirits are there because they represent different dispensations of the creations of God. And when God was done, he decided to invade and create a visible realm, and then he created man. In Ephesians chapter 1 verse 10, when this creation is over, God will wrap it away and start another project. But for now, earth and man is God's youngest creation. And so every spirit is interested in earth and man. So anywhere you find men, spirits are interested. And one thing God did was to give man the authority to superintend over his realm. And so if man must live to serve the will of God, then he must learn spiritual intelligence to be able to defend his borders. For example, the responsibility of defending Kenya is not for the United States. The responsibility of defending Kenya is for Kenyans. So if Kenyans don't learn how to build a defense system to defend Kenya, then Kenya will be in trouble. And if Kenya is in trouble, the business will collapse. The schools will collapse. For example, because Ukraine, now with so much compassion, I'm saying this, because Ukraine could not defend their borders from Russia, activities are on a halt. So defenses in the spirit are the most cardinal responsibilities of believers. Because if a territory is not defended, nothing else can work. If your body is attacked with sickness now, you won't be here praising God. Even the food that you think you love, you won't eat. The car you want to drive, you won't drive. The projects you are handling, everything will stop. And so priesthood, particularly legislation and litigation, becomes very important because it is the only basis by which spirits that wants to hijack the agenda of God are stopped. And a corridor is created for God and God alone to have access and the right of way. And so it's important for us as a church to train people and to build them up, to learn the art of territorial defense. Because if our ranks are depleted in territorial defense, then the purpose of God will not find expression. And that's not the only problem. The major problem is that demons and devils will take over to fulfill their agenda, and so our existence will become useless. Let me read the scripture for you as I attempt to show you why legislators must rise and who they are and the authority levels they must enter. Because as legislators, there are things we can do, but the things we can do are tied only to our authority level, not what we desire. You may want to see certain things happen. Your desire is not enough. It's your authority that will make it happen. And so we will not only teach people why they must be legislators, we need to teach them what they must do in order to be legislators, to assess the kind of authority that is required to uninstall and to dethrone princes in darkness so that the will of God can find expression. But if you don't know this, you may assume that these things are just fairy tales. But this is how civilizations are shaped. I usually call it spirit cities. Every nation is a spirit city. There are spirits transacting actively in every nation. We were sharing some burdens yesterday, that unfortunately are not things you can casually say until you have clearance. How that even bilateral relationship between nations are negotiated based on certain agreements that defy the social structure of the inhabitants of those nations. There are many nations in Africa today that have certain kinds of visas to other Western nations only if they agree to certain demands. And you'll be shocked that those demands are not economic demands. That they can give a country the right to access certain kinds of visa for certain period of time because they accept gay, because they accept LGBTQ. How does LGBTQ impact on economy? So if you don't allow LGBTQ, then your country will not be granted certain number of years for certain visas. How does LGBTQ affect visa? Because they know that the spirit of perversion is the doorway to the Antichrist. And they know that God hates perversion. If you study the Bible, anytime there's perversion, God destroys completely. When angels slept with the daughters of men, God told Noah to build an ark quickly. He destroyed the whole earth. Because the moment perversion comes, the ordinances of God can never stand. The reason God told King Saul to destroy all the Amalekites is because the race of the giants came out of perversion. And so anywhere God sees perversion, he destroys completely. The reason Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed is because God saw perversion. And then today, they come to a country and tell the country, we will give you certain kinds of visas if you allow LGBTQ, because LGBTQ is perversion. In fact, recently, because I began to attack the LGBTQ movement, Facebook began to mute my videos so that my videos can no longer have views. In some countries, they off it. No matter what you do, your views can no longer grow. They mute it. So even the systems that we use have been infiltrated by demons. You now discover they want to kill your visibility because you are beginning to attack sensitive things. And somebody else is deceived, thinking that I feel like a woman. A man says, I feel like a woman. He doesn't know that spirits are involved in manipulating his emotion. Because the more perversion takes place, the more the door opens for evil, iniquity, and darkness to enter a city. They are enthroning principalities. And so legislators need to look into these things and begin to raise utterances in the spirit that will shut it down. That kind of Christianity is not the regular Sunday service. That kind of Christianity is a calling for few people that understands divine agenda. Because those ones are warriors. They are not necessarily coming to God for excitement. They are fighting to defend the heritage of God. And these are demonic intelligences that shape a city. And if it is allowed, you'll be shocked that the next 10 years and the next 15 years, our world will be completely different. The level of maliciousness, the level of violence, the level of callousness will be different. Because something would have gone wrong with the soul of a man, which is the monitor of morality and his walk with God. Even this current World Cup, they had to force the FIFA president to make a statement that included LGBTQ. And one of the board members that was speaking on behalf of FIFA clearly identified himself as a member of LGBTQ. There are many companies today in the world that will not be given certain level of clearance for certain businesses unless their board members, at least one or two, are LGBTQ members. And then you now begin to wonder, what are they looking for? Most of the Western countries today, if you enter there, they give the LGBTQ all the right to speak their mind and to propagate their vision. But you, who is a Christian, if you propagate your own vision, you are prosecuted. So what kind of justice is this that allows certain people to air their own opinion, whereas you cannot air yours? You now know that princes are at work over time. And believers are not aware that iniquity is coming that can uproot the dimensions of God that the generation should host in the next 10 years. And so we come to church and we are looking for his prophecy. Now that there's a new job, there's a breakthrough, you know that we are not growing. Because what the devil is doing now, in the next 10 years, it may become difficult to pray. Because when evil sanitizes the environment, darkness chokes the atmosphere. You will need to be strong in the Lord to be able to pierce through the cloud. And if they choke the atmosphere with darkness, they now have authority to shape the city according to their own nature. Because every city reflects the nature of the dominating spirit. And it's a definite technology. So when Paul was teaching the church in Ephesus, and if you study the writings of Paul, some of the deepest mysteries that Paul shared, he shared with the church in Ephesus and the church in Colossus. And it was in the church in Ephesus that Paul began to tell them, in Ephesians chapter 6 from verse 10. I wanted to enter yesterday, but I didn't have sufficient utterance. You know, this thing, sometimes you will come, you want to talk, God will shut it. Either because the people can't receive it, or because the angels that should defend you when you talk, they were not released. If you talk, you will be at risk. You can, okay, I will affect somebody's theology. Let me leave. You know, when we are teaching in public, there are some things we say that is consistent with doctrine. You know, doctrine is a belief system, and doctrine is designed so that even babes can be included. But when you start traveling with God, you will know that some things are organic. They are deeper than doctrine. You can't explain them. Because there's no doctrine now that can explain how the witch of Endor was able to summon the spirit of Samuel to come and tell Saul that he will die the next day, and he died. There's no doctrine. I can show you many things in scripture that are not trapped in doctrine. Many things. But those ones, they are for those who participate in the game of thrones. So when you come up hither, they will show you those ones. Because those are the secrets. You know, there are many things that they write in your constitution. Everybody is carrying the constitution and arguing. But the reason Kenya is safe are some things that we never highlight in the constitution, but you do. If you go to Western countries today, you know what they do? Some of the programmers that are thieves, criminals, hackers, when they see that you are able to hack into some database, they know that intelligence, they can't waste it. So they don't lock those kind of people. They get them, they recruit them, and turn them to secret service agents. If you are able to sit with one computer and hack into a database, it means you are a gift to that nation. You are not a thief. They will carry you and reprogram your mind. Meanwhile, in the law, if you hack, you will be sentenced to There are some things that they are legislative realities to help defend. There are some kind of actions they take behind the scene to deal with terrorists that is not in the book. But if you don't take that action, terrorism will take over the world. So when they are dealing with the book, they are showing you what you say is okay, it's all right. You can handle people like this. But the terrorists, they know that they are too hardened, that the things written in the book can't break them. So when they want to deal with them, they off the cameras and do some of the things that are not in the book to be able to save the city. It's called legislation. Are we together? And so spirits are involved, and these spirits are vicious beings. Because they are vicious, there is a training syllabus that God makes available for those who he raises to fight them. It's some of those syllables I want to read to you tonight and teach you so that you will know how to war where princes fight. Because not every believer stands there. And this is why we are not the same. There are those who are fighting. That's why the church can still have Sunday service. If they stop fighting, Sunday service will stop. In Colossians 4:12, it says Epaphras is one of you. But see, the difference is that he is a born servant. You are the child of God, but there are some who are servants. And they are not just servants, they are born servants. That means they don't have their will anymore. Because what God traded with them in order for them to do this work is that they submitted their will. Meanwhile, you need your will to serve God because you are a child. But a born servant will have to transact with God with his will and say, take my will. From now till I die, I don't have a will anymore. Now, it is because of those kinds of people that they are churches. Not because of your pastor's rema. He said he labors fervently for you in prayers that you may stand perfect and complete. You came to church, they preached a message, you were weeping. You say this pastor is a good teacher. Maybe you need to find out all the people that preached that message. Because the pastor was just the amplifier. The people who downloaded that possibility into the territory, you may never meet them. It's in heaven they will tell you. Because there are many things happening behind the scenes. And so some of the behind the scenes realities are the things we want to teach here. So that when I start talking about what God does in order to have one legislator, it will make sense to you. If not, you will say it's making Christianity hard. Are we together? So in Ephesians chapter 6, Paul began to enter the deep matters. And he said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. In verse 12. He now told us 4 entities that we are fighting with. You think when you quarrel with somebody, it's because you misunderstood yourself. Paul is saying, your battle is not with men. Men are only puppets that spirits use. He said, your battle is number 1 with principalities. Number 2 is with powers. Number 3 is with rulers of darkness. And number 4 is with spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. Let me show you something that will shock you very quickly. The word principalities is the word arche. It means first in rank. That means when the devil wants to take a territory, the prince that enters that territory first is the one they call a principality. The job of the principality is recruitment. Because when the principality enters Kenya, it will do a survey and a census. Know how many citizens are in Kenya, because it needs people that have legal right in this territory. So when it's done with the survey, it will now also do a census and group people into the giftings that God has given them. Because we need that gift as a corridor to access their soul. When it's done with that, then he will move, then a power will come. The word power here is the word exousia. But this exousia does not just speak about authority. This exousia speaks about the liberty of choice. When the principality assembles people and creates things that attract them, a power will now come and bind them to those things. Those are the things you call addiction. So an addiction is not a habit. An addiction is a seductive commodity that a power uses to enslave you. And so when you get somebody who is addicted and you want to counsel him, you will have a great job to do if you don't know what to do with the power. Because what is happening to that person is beyond the habit. A spirit is using that thing to access his soul. So long as he continues to fornicate, his soul is open for the spirits to use anytime they want. So long as he continues to lie, his soul is open. But the only thing that they will do to keep the door of the soul open is that a power will have to be there. So the power is the one that forces that person against his will to keep the door of his soul open, so that the devil can deploy his gift to carry out his own agenda. The devil is not the one who gave the gift, but he knows how to harness the gift. So he knows you are a prophet. And if you are connected to God, those giftings can become the basis by which God will traffic through you to affect the city. So what he will do is that he will turn you against God through fornication. And so long as you are addicted to fornication, your heart and your soul is open. That's why Paul, speaking in Ephesians 4:27, he said, give no place to the devil. Because if you give a place to a principality, a power will bind you. And when you are bound, then the third person comes. It's called rulers of darkness. The word rulers is the word cosmos kratos. It means the lords of the realm. Because even among spirits, they are lords. And what these lords do is that they write laws. And so when a man has been successfully bound by a power, the lords will now come and write a law. That law now will become his destiny. Now, before you came, there was a Lord of heaven that wrote your destiny. He said, before you were formed in your mother's womb, I knew you. I ordained you to be a prophet, to pull, to uproot, and to establish. Now, that was what the Lord wrote concerning him. But now he came into an ecosystem that is ruled by a spirit. And that spirit is able to access his soul. So that spirit will write another destiny for him. That new destiny is what you call the law that the rulers of darkness write. So a prophet can become a skillful deceiver. Instead of pulling people into the kingdom and delivering them from the pit of hell, the prophet now will begin to pull people into darkness, because now he swindles them of money. If he looks at you, he knows what to tell you to be able to deceive you, because he has the ability to discern your heart posture. And so he's now a Yahoo boy. He's online and he says something. The moment you respond, he suspects what you will say. He thinks he's being smart. He's actually not being smart. He's using the gift of discerning of spirits. He can weigh your spirit and know the next thing you will say. And he will use that ability to guide you into a place where he will successfully deceive you. And he will make $2,000 and say life is good. What is happening now is that a new law has been written to him, so he's fulfilling another destiny. A man who should be a warrior suddenly commits himself to anger, and the ruler comes and writes a law and adds pride to that anger. And so he will use that anger and that pride, and in the fit of rage, kill somebody. They will now lock him behind bars for a lifetime. The destiny was to become a deliverer, but a new law was written. And what the devils did was that they penetrated his soul and they used the power to addict him until a program was written. That program now makes him to fulfill a destiny that God did not write. And then when you continue with the program for a long time, then spiritual wickedness now shows up. The spiritual wickedness is the word poneria. It means the power for depravity. That's why when you begin, it looks as if it's sweet until it ends up in disgrace and shame. They wrote a law through your lust. You are cheating on your wife. You say you are smart. You are having fun. Until when you cannot stop anymore, you are now caught. You are now disgraced. You no longer have face in society. Or you continue, you now go and contact HIV. And then you die. And because you die, your children also becomes wayward. Meanwhile, that was a program that was written. The moment the program was activated, the god of depravity now shows up. You are younger. You are supposed to be a voice in your nation. But the moment God began to give you small visibility, you now had 7 boyfriends. One gives you money. One satisfies your appetite. Another one has a car that drives you around. You say life is good. Until you now end up with abortions and they cut your womb. Now that your womb is cut off, you no longer have the confidence of womanhood. You fall into depression, and then you enter into drugs, and then that destiny is plundered because depravity has entered. Now when they do this thing at a corporate level, they now take over that atmosphere. That territory now becomes their kingdom. So when we say the kingdom of darkness, it's not necessarily in the water. When we say the kingdom of darkness, it's actually what the spirits in the waters come to achieve among men. So the kingdom of darkness is actually with men, because there are princes that come from the waters and they plant their reality in men, So the men begin to mirror on earth what is supposed to be in the waters. Are we together? Now, sometimes, in order for these spirits to be able to do this, they will need human agency to help them. And if you think this is a joke, let me show you 2 cities in the Bible that these guys successfully built. The first is called Egypt. If you study Isaiah, which I will not enter this morning, the Bible calls it the spirit of Egypt. That spirit is a spirit that stops you from fulfilling destiny. So when you find people who are suffering from limitations, oppressions, who cannot rise into their destiny, they are under the oppression of the spirit of Egypt. And so when God wanted to deliver Israel, in Exodus chapter 12 verse 12, the Bible said, God said, tonight I will pass through Egypt and I will judge the gods of Egypt. That means Pharaoh was not the ruler of Egypt. The ruler of Egypt is one of these guys that Paul spoke about in Ephesians chapter 6. Until you judge that ruler, Israel cannot be free. That means Egypt is not a location in North Africa. Egypt is actually a location regulated by a spirit called Egypt. And until God was able to judge that spirit, nothing could happen. And then you come to another city called Babylon. And in Daniel chapter 10 from verse 20, when Daniel was praying, Daniel entered into a surprise revelation. And what did Daniel discover? Daniel discovered that the ruler of Babylon was not the king. He thought the king was the ruler. He was praying to God so that the heart of the king will be touched and they will be set free. When he started praying, he was now shocked that there was a prince called the Prince of Persia. It was the Prince of Persia that was dictating everything happening in Babylon. And he was surprised to know that these princes had allocated times and seasons to themselves. So much so that the Bible said, when the Prince of Persia is gone, he said the Prince of Grecia will come. Do you see why Paul said we wrestle against principalities and powers, rulers of darkness and spiritual wickedness? Because when one finishes his regime, he steps aside for another to come in. And while they are doing that in the heavenlies, they recruit agents on earth that they use. The agents they use on earth are the agents that helps to bring spiritual administrations of what is happening in the heavens into the earth realm, because they will need to mingle with men. And so when they isolate the people that have ordinations and destinies of rulership over men, they now pervert their soul and use them to become the guardians that will translate their purposes into the human ecosystem.